Coming up, D-backs lose 3 out of 4 to the Colorado Rockies. What went wrong? And bringing down the MLB All-Star game with Sully Baseball. We're giving you our ballots next.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there, you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CreatorThomas24 from my personal account, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks on both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free and available on all platforms, so please continue to tell your friends. And hey, D-backs fans, you're going to love this. Today's episode is brought to you by the Sports Card Investor app. Welcome to the world of sports trading cards reimagined. Stay tuned later in the show for more info on this awesome new tool for collectors. You're going to want to check out the Sports Card Investor app today. So we're going to be talking about that later in the pod. We're going to be bringing out MLB All-Star ballots with Sully Baseball, telling you our ballots, who we think should have made the starting lineup, and going through that kind of stuff. But let's first talk about this Colorado Rockies versus Diamondbacks series, because this was a very close series. All 3 of the D-backs losses in this 4-game series was by 1 run. And the sad thing about this D-backs series is the D-backs actually outscored the Colorado Rockies in this series, if you could believe that. The D-backs lost 3 out of 4 games and had a positive run differential in this series, because it was a lot of games where the D-backs just ended up blowing the game late, and that's what they did in Sunday's game in the finale against the Colorado Rockies, because this should have been a split series. This should have been a series where you beat the Giants, then you come out this Rocky series with a split after losing those first 2 games, and you kind of feel good about yourself as a D-backs fan, because I was just kind of thinking to myself the other day, I was just sitting in my car, I was driving, and I was like, you know what? This D-backs team could go on a little run and maybe be like a borderline 500 team over the next month, because they're finally healthy. And this defense behind the starting pitching is elite right now. And we saw it in Sunday's game, because when you just think about the defensive identity of this team right now, with David Peralta, Dalton Varsho, Alek Thomas in your outfield, Perdomo, Josh Rojas on the left side of the infield, with Christian Walker, arguably the best defensive first baseman in the game right now, Carson Kelly behind the plate. Like, with this pitching staff that likes to pitch to contact, I think this D-backs team could go on a little mini run, because this lineup is finally healthy. So the defense is finally healthy. So this defense is locked in. They're elite right now. And with the way this pitching staff pitches, which is mostly to contact, those balls are going to guys that could finally make plays and not going to have defensive miscues. For the most part, we did see a big defensive miscue in Sunday's game, but a big reason why I think this D-backs team can maybe go on a little run and be like a borderline 500 team is because this team is finally healthy. So all the defensive pieces are there. And I think they could get kind of sloppy and play dirty and maybe have a lot of low scoring games where they could win 3-2. But to do that, you're going to need your bullpen to actually perform well, which is the toughest part of this D-backs team. But so far in the month of July, the offense has actually not been too bad so far. So if you can get your starting pitching to pitch well, do the pitch to contact and have it end up in the defense's hands, and then your offense is scoring around 5 runs a game, that's a recipe for success for this D-backs team that I think is attainable. I think this D-backs team can score 4 to 5 runs a game. Then maybe the starting pitching gives up 2 to 3 runs like it did that first month of the season. So maybe this team could go on a little run. We'll see what happens. But to do that, you're going to need your defense to continue to play well, and you're going to need your starting pitching to continue to play well, because that is what we saw in Sunday's game. We saw some great defense. We saw some really good starting pitching, which we felt like was going to lead to a D-backs win, because for the longest time, The D-backs led 2-0 in this game on Sunday up until the 7th inning because Tyler Gilbert had probably his best start maybe since that no-hitter. 5 2/3 innings pitched, 3 hits, 1 walk, 1 strikeout, no earned runs allowed. Like, Tyler Gilbert was really efficient, 81 pitches. It was the best Tyler Gilbert we've seen so far this season. And then I was just speaking of the defense, like the defense was making phenomenal plays early in that game. He had Dalton Varsho making a catch that saved a couple runs in the corner of the outfield. You had Alec Thomas making catches at the wall. You had Christian Walker making a play that can also save a couple runs as well. Like, there was multiple defensive plays, defensive highlights in the game on Sunday that just led to actual runs being saved off the board for this D-backs team. And it was just kind of sad because this was a game where the pitching was great. Like I said, the defense was great. And then it all just kind of fell apart in the 7th inning because Josh Rojas, who I think had just been phenomenal at third base this year defensively. Like, I think Josh Rojas has been one of the biggest success stories as a developmental piece in this D-backs organization this year and maybe of the last few years. Like, I've talked about how one of the big things I don't like from this D-backs team and front office and the managers is, like, I feel like a lot of the players, the longer they stay in this D-backs organization on this D-backs team, they actually start to regress in their development. Like, when you look at the Robbie Rays of the world, it feels like a lot of players actually go backwards the longer they stay with the D-backs. But so far for Josh Rojas, like, he's a guy that just kind of proven me wrong because he's gotten better every season. And so far this year, like a 284 average, a 787 OPS, like, Josh Rojas has been really good this season. I think his defense has been on point this year, but we got to give him some blame for today's game because he had a huge error, which led to 3 runs being scored and the Colorado Rockies taking the lead in the 7th inning. So it was just a blown game by the D-backs late in this game, by their defense, a little bit by their bullpen as well. So it was not a fun finale for the D-backs to end this game. And now I'm like, can the D-backs actually go on that run? If the D-backs win this game, then I would have thought that they could have gone on that run, or maybe they could be 500, because now you look at the upcoming D-backs schedule. They play the Giants again, so maybe they actually have the Giants number. I guess we'll see in this upcoming series. And then they play the Padres before the All-Star break. So we'll see what happens with this D-backs team. Maybe they could get back on track against the Giants, and maybe they could do something against the Padres, but it feels like the Padres always have the D-backs number, so I'm not going to have too much hope there. But let's give a quick shout out to Joe Mantiply for being named the D-backs All-Star representative. I think that was the right choice. Some people would have said maybe Zach Gallen, because Zach Gallen has had a pretty good season. But if I had to pick a D-backs All-Star representative, I would have picked Joe Mantiply as well. Ketel Marte has been phenomenal basically since the first month of season has ended. But overall, Ketel Marte's numbers aren't as dominant as you would like them to be. Neither are Zach Gallen. So I think Joe Mantiply was the right choice to be the D-backs All-Star representative in the 2022 MLB All-Star game.